She slept with her dog every night. Months later, she realized what had been happening to her body. Every night, as the world outside went quiet, Calla would get into bed, and right beside her, Rue would do the same. Her dog wasn't just a pet. He was her comfort, her peace. As she closed her eyes, she could feel his soft, warm breath near her side. It was steady, gentle, almost like it was telling her, "You're safe now." This became her nightly routine. No matter what kind of day she had, good or bad, Rue was always there. He would wait until she lay down, then curl up right next to her, often pressing himself against her chest or belly, like he knew exactly where she needed him. She didn't think much of it. To her, it was just love, just a sweet dog who never left her side. But over time, something strange started to happen. Little things. She began feeling better, sleeping deeper, waking up calmer, less anxious. It felt like she was slowly healing, even though she didn't know why. She never imagined that something so normal was secretly changing her life. But months later, when the doctors finally told her what had been happening to her body, she was completely shocked. Calla was 33 when her world quietly fell apart. From the outside, it looked like she had everything together. A promising career in graphic design, a stable income, and a quiet charm that drew people in. But behind closed doors, her heart was shattered. Her marriage had ended suddenly. Not in some explosive fight, but in cold silence. The kind of silence that says, "We've both stopped trying." 8 years of shared memories, plans, and promises dissolved into court documents and unanswered messages. There was no cheating, no scandal, just a growing distance that neither of them knew how to fix. And in the end, Calla found herself standing in an empty apartment with half the furniture gone and all the warmth sucked out of the walls. She packed up her life and moved to a small, unfamiliar city. A fresh start, people called it. But how do you start fresh when your soul still feels stuck in the past? The first few weeks in her new apartment were the hardest. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was painful. The kind of silence that echoed. She would lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts growing heavier by the minute. The bed felt too big. The walls felt too close. Every breath felt like a reminder that she was alone. Anxiety crept into every part of her day. Simple things, answering the door, going to the grocery store, talking to neighbors, began to feel overwhelming. Nights were even worse. Her chest would tighten, her mind would spiral, and the tears would come without warning. She wasn't just lonely. She was lost emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, something inside her whispered, "Go to the shelter." She didn't know why. She didn't plan on adopting a dog. She just wanted to feel something. Maybe a little life, a little love, even if it wasn't hers. She walked into the shelter with wet hair and tired eyes. The air smelled like metal cages and cleaning spray. Barking filled the space. High-pitched, desperate cries for attention. But in the very back, in the quietest corner, lay a dog who didn't make a sound. He was medium-sized, with a dusty red coat and sad, golden eyes that looked almost human. He didn't bark, didn't wag his tail. He simply watched her. There was something hauntingly familiar about his stillness. His name, the shelter worker said, was Rue. He had been found in an abandoned house, left alone for days, possibly weeks, without food or clean water. No one knew what he had been through, only that he had survived it. He didn't trust easily, they warned. He had trauma. He needed time. But when Calla crouched down beside his kennel, something happened. Rue slowly walked toward her. No barking, no hesitation, just a slow, quiet recognition, as if his broken pieces recognized hers. In that moment, she knew. She signed the papers, took him home, and on that very first night, when she lay down in bed, Rue jumped up beside her, carefully, almost nervously. He lay down just inches away, his body facing hers, his breathing slow and quiet. For the first time in months, Calla slept through the night. It was the first peaceful sleep she could remember. The first, she told herself it was just comfort. Dogs are loyal after all. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, something deeper began to unfold. Rue didn't just sleep beside her. He positioned himself in the same spot every night, sometimes by her chest, sometimes curled tightly by her stomach. He wouldn't move until she was fully asleep, and by morning he was still there, watching over her like a quiet guardian. There was something about his presence that calmed her in a way nothing else could. Not therapy, not medication, not even time. Rue was doing something no one else had been able to do, helping her feel safe again, helping her feel like she mattered. The bond between them wasn't just emotional. It was something unspoken, unseen. Two broken souls slowly learning how to breathe again. Together. Calla had no idea just how deep their connection truly was. Not yet, because while Rue was healing her heart, something far more surprising was happening inside her body. And months later, the doctors would reveal something she never saw coming. Every night, their routine remained the same. It wasn't much, but it had become everything. Calla would brush her teeth in front of the bathroom mirror, the soft hum of the electric toothbrush filling the silence. She didn't hurry, there was no reason to. The house was quiet, and the only company she needed was Rue, who sat patiently by the bedroom door, watching her with those ever-knowing eyes. Once she finished, he'd rise from his spot and walk over to the bed, where he'd wait for her to slide under the covers. It was as if he understood the rhythm of her life now. Each movement was so natural, like clockwork. Rue would settle beside her, curling up by her stomach or chest. It wasn't just habit, it was a need, something deeper. Every night, without fail, he positioned himself just inches away from her, always near her core. Sometimes he would rest his head right on her chest, his soft breath rising and falling in sync with hers. It was comforting, but it was also odd. The way he always chose that spot, the area around her heart and stomach, was something Calla never fully questioned. She had grown used to it, even welcomed it. The warmth of his body against hers became the most peaceful part of her day, but somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered why he always chose that spot. It wasn't a coincidence. As the days passed, little things started to change, though they were easy to overlook at first. The exhaustion crept in slowly. Calla would wake up feeling like she hadn't slept at all, despite spending hours in bed with Rue curled up beside her. Mornings became harder. Her energy drained faster than it ever had before. She brushed it off as stress. After all, she had gone through so much in the past year. Maybe her body was still catching up. But then came the dizziness. It would hit her at random times, when she stood up too quickly, when she bent over to tie her shoes, or even while she was sitting at her desk. Her vision would blur, and for a moment, the room would tilt, leaving her clutching the edge of her desk for balance. The dizziness wasn't consistent, but it was enough to make her pause. She shook it off as nothing more than a result of poor diet or long work hours. She hadn't been eating as well as she should have, and the stress of her new life in a different city was still weighing on her. Maybe it was just her body adjusting to the changes. It was easier to blame the chaos of the past months than to face the reality that something deeper might be happening. But the bruises, those she couldn't explain away. Small, dark marks would appear on her legs, sometimes on her arms. They weren't from any accident or fall. They just seemed to pop up out of nowhere, always in places she hadn't noticed before. At first, she thought they were just from bumping into furniture, or maybe she had knocked something against her skin without realizing it. But the bruises kept coming, always in places she couldn't remember injuring. They weren't painful, just strange and unsettling. Yet, despite all these physical changes, Calla noticed something else, something unexpected. Emotionally, she felt more stable than she had in months. There was a calmness she hadn't had before, a sense of peace that settled over her every time she woke up. The anxiety, the constant worry that had once plagued her, was softer now, more manageable. It was as if Rue's presence was lifting the weight from her chest. She no longer felt trapped in her own mind, constantly fighting against the rush of negative thoughts. She started to realize that she felt better, not physically but emotionally. It was a strange contrast. Her body seemed to be deteriorating in small, mysterious ways, yet her heart felt lighter, happier even. She couldn't explain it. She didn't want to think too much about it. Maybe it was just her mind playing tricks on her, or maybe it was just the natural effects of time. Either way, the odd changes, the bruises, and the exhaustion felt distant, insignificant compared to the calm Rue brought her. But deep down, Calla couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Still, she pushed it aside. After all, her life had been turned upside down in the past year. A few odd symptoms couldn't possibly be anything serious, could they? As the days passed, Calla's symptoms only seemed to grow worse. The exhaustion crept in relentlessly, each day more draining than the last. But what truly began to unsettle her were the moments that came out of nowhere. The dizziness that hit her like a wave, making her head spin and her vision blur. She found herself struggling to focus, unable to keep her balance. Yet there was never any pain. It was as if her body was slowly deteriorating in ways she couldn't see or understand. It was one of those dizzy spells that pushed her to make a decision. That afternoon, while walking Rue in the park, she had collapsed. It wasn't dramatic. In fact, it was almost anticlimactic. 1 second, she was walking with Rue, his leash loosely in her hand, the soft rustle of leaves around them. The next, her knees buckled beneath her. Her mind registered the sensation of the cold, rough ground against her palms as she tried to steady herself, but it didn't happen fast enough. Rue was instantly beside her, his large brown eyes filled with concern, nudging her face with his nose, his tail wagging uncertainly. He had always been there for her, a constant source of comfort since she had adopted him. But this felt different. Calla took deep breaths, trying to ignore the dizziness that threatened to swallow her. She rose slowly, leaning against the nearby bench for support. She could hear Rue whining softly, pacing around her in tight circles, as if urging her to get up. When she managed to stand, she realized just how out of it she truly was. It wasn't a regular fainting spell or the kind of dizziness you got from standing up too fast. It felt deeper, more unsettling. The rest of the walk back home was a blur. She had barely made it through the front door before she collapsed onto the couch, still dazed from the episode. Rue jumped up beside her, sensing her unease, curling into her side as if to say, "I'm here." But Calla knew she couldn't ignore it any longer. Something wasn't right. The next day, she called her doctor and made an appointment. She had been to doctors before, but this felt different. Something about the way her body was responding, or rather not responding, troubled her in ways she couldn't explain. Maybe it was the bruises that appeared out of nowhere, without any clear cause. Maybe it was the exhaustion that felt like it was crushing her chest. Whatever it was, she couldn't push it away anymore. The dizziness was one thing, but the feeling of being lost inside her own body was something else. The doctor's office had never felt so cold and sterile. As soon as she sat down in the exam room, she could feel the weight of her own anxiety pressing on her chest, just like the strange heaviness that had settled into her bones over the past few weeks. The doctor took her blood and ran a full series of tests, trying to find the root of the issue. A few days later, the call came. "Calla." The doctor's voice was tight, laced with urgency. "I need to speak with you, in person." Felt like an eternity before she could get to the appointment. Every second between the call and the meeting was filled with racing thoughts. What was wrong with her? What had the tests shown? The anticipation twisted in her gut, the uncertainty gnawing away at her. When she arrived at the doctor's office, her pulse was racing. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and she could see the tension in the doctor's eyes before he even said a word. He motioned for her to sit, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "I've reviewed your blood work," the doctor began, "and I need you to understand. Something's happening inside your body, but it's unlike anything I've seen before." Calla's heart skipped a beat. The way he spoke made it sound serious, like something she should be terrified of. But there was no pain. She wasn't doubled over with illness. She wasn't bedridden. "Your blood tests came back showing elevated inflammatory markers," he continued. "That means your immune system is fighting something, but there's no obvious infection, no obvious injury. We're seeing markers that usually indicate the body's in a state of attack, But the strange part is you're not in pain. Your body is essentially waging war on itself, but it's doing so silently. Calla stared at him, confused. But how is that possible? I'm not in pain. I'm not sick. I don't feel. I know, he interrupted. That's what makes this so odd. It's as if your body is in a constant state of stress, but you don't feel it. No swelling, no pain, just the symptoms you've been describing. The dizziness, the bruising, the exhaustion. It all lines up, but there's no clear cause. And, frankly, I don't have all the answers yet. Calla felt her hands trembling. What does that mean for me? What happens now? We'll need to run more tests, the doctor said, his voice softer now. But this is something we need to keep a close watch on. Could be related to stress. Or it could be something else. Autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, or even something more obscure. She felt numb, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. She wasn't in pain, but she was beginning to realize that it didn't matter. Her body was breaking down in ways she couldn't understand, and no one could explain why. No one could tell her what was going on. Her thoughts circled back to Rue. She had never felt so deeply connected to him before. And now, in the midst of this confusion, she felt as though his presence was the only thing keeping her grounded. Could he somehow be connected to what was happening to her? She couldn't shake the feeling that his bond with her was part of something deeper, something she hadn't yet realized. Calla! The doctor's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. We'll get to the bottom of this. I just need you to stay calm and follow up with me in a few days. You need to rest, but don't ignore the symptoms. As she walked out of the doctor's office, a storm of emotions raged inside her. Fear, uncertainty, and confusion tangled together, leaving her feeling lost. But there was one thing she was sure of now. Something was happening to her, and it was far bigger than she could have ever imagined. After the doctor's appointment, Calla couldn't shake the nagging sense that something was missing from the equation. Her symptoms were worsening, but the fact that her body wasn't reacting in the typical way left her feeling more lost than ever. She knew she needed answers, something to help her understand why she felt so disconnected from her own body. That's when she decided to seek a second opinion from a specialist. This time, she visited a well-known immunologist, hoping for more clarity. The tests were more detailed, the questions more probing, and the examination was longer. It felt like every inch of her body was being scrutinized under a microscope. But still, there was no clear diagnosis. The specialist confirmed some troubling news. Calla's body was showing early signs of an autoimmune condition. It was still in the early stages, so the symptoms hadn't fully manifested, but they were undeniably there. Her immune system was attacking its own tissues, but there was a strange silver lining. The doctor's face was a mixture of puzzlement and awe when he shared his findings. The inflammation markers are present, he said, but what's unusual is that they're being regulated in a way that we don't usually see. It's as if your body has found some sort of balance, some way of suppressing the worst symptoms on its own. Calla was left staring at him, her mind racing. What did he mean? How could her body regulate the condition without her even knowing it? It didn't make sense. Her thoughts were interrupted as the specialist recommended that she keep an eye on her symptoms and return for further tests in a few weeks. He promised to help her manage the condition, but the explanation still felt incomplete, like a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Still uncertain, Calla tried to move forward with her life, but the sense of unease lingered. That's when a conversation with a close friend led to a chance encounter that would change everything. Her friend invited her to a health seminar, hoping to take her mind off things. Calla wasn't sure what to expect, but she went anyway, just to get out of the house for a while. The seminar covered a range of topics related to health and wellness, but one particular speaker caught her attention. It was a veterinary neurologist, someone specializing in animal behavior and the physiological connections between humans and animals. He was presenting a fascinating topic about the bond between pets and their owners, particularly focusing on how certain dogs could detect and even regulate their owners' emotional and physical symptoms. At first, Calla thought it sounded like a stretch. How could a dog influence her health? It seemed impossible. But the more the neurologist spoke, the more intrigued she became. He explained how dogs, particularly highly intuitive breeds, could sense changes in their owner's body chemistry. He discussed case after case where dogs seemed to instinctively know when their owners were on the brink of a medical crisis, such as a seizure or even a heart attack. And more astonishingly, some dogs had been observed to have an almost protective influence, calming their owners during emotional stress or providing relief during physical discomfort. That's when it clicked. Kala's heart raced as she pieced together the puzzle in her mind. She remembered how Rue always seemed to lie against her chest or stomach, always curling up exactly where she felt discomfort or pressure. Over the past few months, there had been a growing pattern she had dismissed as a coincidence. Rue never just slept beside her. He seemed to choose the exact spots where she had started feeling unexplainable inflammation or discomfort. The soft ache in her joints, the tightness in her muscles, the strange feeling of being unwell without having a diagnosis. Rue was always right there, his warm body pressed against her, as if he was instinctively guarding her or providing some sort of relief. She had brushed it off at first, thinking it was just the comforting presence of her dog. But now, listening to the neurologist, the pieces began to fall into place. Could it be? Could Rue somehow be helping her body regulate this mysterious condition? Her mind raced with the implications. She felt a sense of awe and wonder, mixed with disbelief. Rue had been there for her, always by her side. But was it possible that his presence was having a profound physiological effect on her? Was it possible that her bond with him was actually protecting her from the full brunt of the autoimmune condition that was slowly taking hold? That night, she reflected deeply. Rue's presence, his intuitive nature, and the way he seemed to sense her pain and discomfort made sense in ways she couldn't ignore. He wasn't just her pet. He was her partner in this unseen battle. As the days passed, she started paying closer attention to the times when Rue would settle beside her, always on the areas of her body that had been affected. It was as if he knew, long before she could articulate the pain, and had instinctively found a way to offer comfort, even healing. The realization hit her. Rue had been protecting her in a way she couldn't have imagined. With a new sense of wonder, Kala realized that her bond with Rue was far deeper than she had ever understood. Rue wasn't just the dog who kept her company at night. He was part of her healing process, part of the balance her body had found in its fight against an illness she had yet to fully comprehend. But now she had hope. The emotional connection between them had always been strong, but now she saw it as something more, a powerful force that was helping her, body and soul. Rue had become more than just a companion. He was a source of strength, a silent protector in a world where everything else seemed uncertain. Kala's mind raced as the vet's words settled in, but nothing could have prepared her for the gravity of what came next. Her heart felt like it was slowing down, every beat a little harder, as she processed the information. Rue, her loyal companion, the one who had never left her side, the one who had kept her sane and safe, was now suffering because of her. She had always known that their bond was strong, that Rue understood her in ways no one else could. But she never imagined that their connection would go this deep, that he would carry her emotional burdens for her. Now, as she sat across from the vet, all the pieces of their relationship started to fall into place. Rue wasn't just comforting her during the sleepless nights or giving her a sense of peace with his quiet presence. He had been doing more than that. He had been silently taking on her pain. The vet looked at her with a deep, knowing sadness in her eyes. When dogs are closely bonded to their owners, sometimes they absorb their owner's distress. It's not just emotional, it's physical too. Rue has been carrying your anxiety, your stress, and now it's affecting him. Kala's chest tightened as the weight of it hit her. She hadn't realized just how much stress and anxiety she'd been holding in her life. The long days of worry, the loneliness, the nights she spent crying herself to sleep. Rue had been there through it all, always by her side. She had thought he was helping her, but she never imagined the price he was paying. Her hands trembled as she looked down at him, lying on the vet's table, his eyes tired and dull, not the vibrant spark she was used to. He had been her protector, her constant source of comfort, but now he was the one in need. The thought that Rue might be ill because of her overwhelmed her. "Is there anything we can do?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The vet nodded, offering a gentle smile, but it did little to ease Cala's worry. We can treat him, help him manage the stress, and get him on a healing path. But it's important that you also find ways to reduce your own stress. He can't continue absorbing your pain. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Rue had been a silent warrior for her, taking on every ounce of her emotional weight, and now it was her turn to protect him. The tears came then without warning. Cala couldn't help but cry for all the times she had leaned on Rue without realizing just how much he was carrying. He had given so much of himself to her, and now she had to find a way to give back. She looked at him, her faithful, beautiful Rue, who had been with her through it all. How could she have not noticed how much he had taken on? How could she have not seen the toll it was taking on him? Every night, when she lay in bed with him, feeling his warmth beside her, she never realized that his warmth was more than comfort. It was his way of absorbing her pain, of shielding her from the world's harshness. Her heart cracked as she gently ran her hand through his fur. "I'm so sorry, baby. I never wanted to hurt you." But Rue, sensing her distress, nuzzled her hand, his way of telling her that he was still there, still by her side. Despite everything, despite the strain he was under, he was still giving, still loving. And Cala knew, in that moment, that she couldn't let him down. She made a promise to him, to herself, that she would do everything in her power to help him heal, to make sure he never had to carry her pain again. It was time for her to be strong for him, just as he had been strong for her. The days after Rue's diagnosis and the vet's advice were a whirlwind for Cala. She knew now that her life needed to change, not just for her own well-being, but for Rue's. She had come to realize that healing wasn't just about managing her illness. It was about creating a new, balanced life where both she and Rue could thrive. With determination and love, Cala took immediate steps to overhaul her lifestyle. She began with a complete overhaul of her diet, embracing healthier meals that would nourish both her body and mind. No more caffeine-laden late nights or junk food fueling her anxiety. Instead, she introduced fresh vegetables, whole grains, and anti-inflammatory foods. She also committed to a more structured routine, incorporating regular exercise to boost her mood and energy. She didn't stop there. Cala reached out to a holistic doctor and sought medical treatments that would help both her body and mind recover from the long battle with stress and autoimmune symptoms. Her therapy sessions became an essential part of her healing, not just for herself, but as a way to understand how she could better care for Rue, who had been bearing so much of her emotional weight. The most important change, however, was in her relationship with Rue. They both needed to heal, and Cala made it her mission to ensure that Rue received the best care possible. She took him to the vet regularly, focusing on stress relief therapies that would help him regain his energy. She incorporated calming routines at home, including daily walks in the park, where he could relax and enjoy the fresh air without the weight of her own pain hanging over him. Rue's recovery was slow, but steady. There were days when he seemed full of energy, and others when he needed more rest. But Cala was there with him every step of the way, reminding him that he wasn't alone, just as he had never let her feel alone. Slowly, the spark returned to his eyes, and Cala could see the transformation in him, physically, but also emotionally. The dog who once carried the burden of her stress now walked beside her with his head held high, proud and happy. Then, something unexpected happened. Cala felt compelled to share their story. With the encouragement of friends and family, she decided to write a blog about her journey. A raw, heartfelt account of how her bond with Rue had helped save her life and how, together, they had healed. The blog went viral. People from all over the world resonated with her story. They shared their own experiences with therapy animals, the unspoken bond between humans and dogs, and how these animals could impact their health in ways they never expected. Cala's vulnerability and the depth of her relationship with Rue struck a chord with thousands of readers. She received messages of gratitude, encouragement, and shared healing, and soon, she found herself invited to speak at events advocating for therapy animals and the healing power of emotional bonds. As her platform grew, so did her commitment to advocating for animals who played vital roles in their owners' health and well-being. Kala became a voice for those who had yet to discover the extraordinary ways animals could impact their lives. She dedicated her time to raising awareness about the therapeutic roles that animals like Rue could play in the lives of people struggling with chronic illness, anxiety, and trauma. Despite the newfound fame, Kala never forgot the most important thing: Rue. As she became more deeply involved in her advocacy work, she made sure to always prioritize him, ensuring he felt loved and cherished every single day. And so, their journey together continued. Every night, Rue still slept beside her, his warm, reassuring presence still as important to her as it had ever been. But now, Kala didn't just appreciate the comfort he brought. She understood the true power of their connection. She understood that their bond wasn't just a simple comfort. It was a lifeline, a force that had carried them both through dark days and had helped them come out on the other side stronger than ever. In the stillness of the night, as they lay together, Kala held him close. No longer did she take for granted the quiet, simple act of having him beside her. She understood just how powerful and sacred that bond was. Rue wasn't just her dog. He was her partner in healing, her protector, and her greatest gift. And as they slept side by side, with the soft rhythm of Rue's breathing filling the room, Kala knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. Their love, their bond, and their shared healing would continue to grow stronger every day. As Kala lay there with Rue, feeling his steady heartbeat against her chest, she realized something profound. She had spent so many nights thinking she was rescuing a broken dog, but the truth was, he had been rescuing her, piece by piece, night by night. Rue wasn't just the companion she needed. He was her silent healer, her protector in ways she could never have imagined. It wasn't just the comfort of his presence. It was the healing power of their bond. Every night, as they lay together, his quiet strength gave her a sense of peace that no medication or therapy could provide. Kala now understood that sometimes the greatest healers are the ones who don't speak at all, but simply love us through the silence. Have you ever shared a bond this deep with an animal? Maybe it was a dog, a cat, or another creature that became your strength in the hardest of times. Let us know in the comments below. Their love may be silent, but it can be life-saving.